Welcome to Food of Love, a series of essays on music and music culture. So, you played recorder in music class when you were in elementary school, right? I imagine, depending on your aptitude for music, it was either a pivotal moment of discovery or, I don't know, you made some squeaky noises for 30 minutes a day and then went to go eat boogers at lunch or some shit like that. I had the former experience, and I wanted to talk to you about it today. Third grade recorder lessons had the honor of being the educational environment in which I discovered that I am part of a small percentage of humans who have absolute pitch, or AP for short. It's also called perfect pitch, but the AP acronym is snazzy, and I really don't want to be saying PP throughout this video. I'm not going to tell you exactly what AP is just yet. First, I want to tell you a little bit about what it means to me personally. Usually when I make these videos, I do a fair bit of research, but this time I'm coming at you mostly with my raw, unadulterated lived experience. I hope this is a good resource for musicians and non-musicians alike who don't have AP, and for other people with AP, I hope my experiences can resonate with you. If there's anything I don't cover in this video regarding the conversation around AP, let me know in the comments and I'll address them at some point in a future episode. Also, like and subscribe, you know what to do. If you didn't play recorder in school, it's basically a flute with a whistle on the end that peaked like 300 years ago. It's actually a fairly misunderstood instrument, but that's a story for another day. And also this video by Brian Kroc. It's since been adopted in modern music pedagogy through its use as one of the primary instruments in the Orff Schulwerk. You know Karl Orff, right? Carmina Burana. Oh, Fortuna. Yeah. He developed this whole educational approach called the Orff Schulwerk that we don't really have time to talk about. You've definitely seen a few Orff instruments if you went to elementary school in the United States, and suffice it to say, the recorder gets pretty frequent use alongside these as a way to get kids familiar with the fundamentals of Western music. I think we played Orff percussion in 1st and 2nd grade, but by 3rd we were on recorders and we were learning how to read basic notation. I don't remember exactly how it came about. I must have demonstrated somehow that I just knew what the notes of the recorder were, even when there wasn't one in my hands. Like, I could tell you what they were about as instantly as I could tell you what color the sky is. After class one day, my music teacher sat me behind an upright piano where I couldn't see her fingers, and I named some white keys. C, G, A, D, whatever the notes were exactly is lost to time, but she called my parents at our house later that day to tell them that I have perfect pitch. My initial reaction was one of confusion. First, because I had never heard of that, and second, because I didn't know it was possible to hear any other way. This piece of paper is purple, this box of Cheez-Its is red, this note is B. Doesn't everyone know that? Google's dictionary defines absolute pitch as the ability to recognize the pitch of a note or produce any given note. It's often described as a form of photographic memory, and indeed there are some examples of musicians with AP who also had brilliant memories, like jazz trumpeter Woody Shaw. If there's anything I'd change about Google's definition, I'd just add that for it to truly be absolute pitch, you have to be able to do it without any external auditory reference. This might seem like nitpicking, but stick with me. The reason I don't call it perfect pitch is because I think perfect is a slight misnomer. To me, calling it perfect would imply that my sense of pitch is always completely in tune and locked in at all times. Ask any of us with AP and we'll tell you it doesn't make it any easier to play in tune. One of my composition professors in undergrad has perfect pitch that's about 50 cents flat because the piano in his childhood home was about that flat. Personally, I still struggle with intonation issues whenever I play a saxophone. It's very easy to go sharp on this thing, the struggle is so real. But think of it this way, when I hear a note, I absolutely know what it is, as long as it's in the ballpark of one of the 12 tones of the Western chromatic scale. Microtones give me trouble, I'm gonna have a lot of issues if I ever want to learn traditional Arabic music. It's often said that about 1 in 10,000 people have AP, but there actually isn't a whole lot of evidence to support that figure. It comes from a study published in the Journal of the Acoustical Society of America in 1955 by a physiologist by the name of A. Bockham, and the only piece of evidence he gives in support of that 1 in 10,000 figure, or as he puts it, less than 1/100th of 1%, isn't supported by any data that can be found in the rest of the article. And yet this is the figure that's been repeated ad nauseum for decades now. That's awesome. However, there is evidence to suggest that certain demographics are more likely to have it than others. For one thing, it's indisputably more common among musicians, which goes without saying. Pour one out for all the AP having non-musicians who will never know, but it's also more common among people who are blind from birth, people who are native speakers of tonal languages such as Cantonese, Mandarin, and a whole host of others, people with a genetic disorder called Williams syndrome, and people who are on the autism spectrum, which might explain how I wound up with it. Although the evidence for its prevalence among people with autism spectrum disorders has also been questioned lately, so I have no idea. Chances are, if you're watching this video, you've probably seen Adam Neely's perfect pitch video already, so most of what I've said won't be news to you, but if you haven't, what's wrong with you? Pause this video and watch that one. It's super sick, and it made me very afraid for reasons that will become apparent toward the end. It's maybe the most thorough video on the entire internet on the subject of AP. However, there's one aspect of having AP that I think goes somewhat overlooked in it, and it's one you only fully realize if you have it. There's no good way to talk about having AP without sounding like a complete a**hole. If you already know what AP is, it's probably because of Charlie Puth. I'd just like to say on behalf of people with AP, we're sorry. In all seriousness, I harbor no bad feelings towards Mr. Puth, but his unofficial status as the most prominent celebrity ambassador for AP hasn't exactly contributed to a very positive image for us. You and I both want him to just pump the brakes on things a little bit over on TikTok. Although it's not like the image of AP havers among musicians was ever squeaky clean to begin with. If you've been in a high-level grade school ensemble, or if you majored in music in college, you've definitely met that person for whom AP is more or less a personality trait or perhaps a way of life. If a recording is a few cents sharp or flat, they have to mention it. They have to tell you what the notes of the sounds of everyday life are, day in, day out, constantly. Admittedly, a lot of this stereotype is just me projecting my own insecurities, but I think it's absolutely grounded in reality. I've seen these people and I've been this person. I like to think I'm a bit better now. If you have AP, you're also probably familiar with an informal hazing ritual that you will go through every time a layperson discovers that you have perfect pitch? I'm referring to something that I call the what note is this game? Ha! A flat. How about this one? Ha! That was a D. Oh, what about this one? Claps don't have any pitch. What? So a stereotype of musicians with AP has certainly emerged due to a number of cultural factors that are largely out of control of the people who actually have it. While I won't go so far as to say the stigma against us is discriminatory, you can definitely catch a weird vibe whenever other musicians find out you have AP. Hashtag not all non-perfect pitch havers, but in my experience, AP is associated in some musicians' minds with a know-it-all attitude and a superiority complex. Again, it's not like there's absolutely no basis for this in reality, hashtag not all perfect pitch havers, but also, you're just jealous, in all seriousness. Like, come on, man, I didn't ask to have this, I literally cannot help it. It's like when people act all weird after I tell them what my zodiac sign is. It's the day I was born, or my level of pitch memory, really such a monumental signifier of who I am that you're judging me this hard for it. This is why I want to talk to you about AP from my insider perspective. I want so desperately for the experience of having AP to be demystified. Yes, it's rare. Yes, it has its advantages, but there's a lot of things that get left out of the conversation put forth by Charlie Puth's appearances on The Tonight Show, or those videos of Dylan Beato hearing the densest tone clusters conceived by mankind. There are two main categories of ways that AP has affected my relationship with music and sound in general that I'm gonna unpack for you here. First, let's talk about the ways in which it shapes my sense of hearing. This kind of moves in patterns of one con for every pro. For one thing, AP definitely gave me a decent head start when I began doing ear training, where you learn to identify intervals, melodies, harmonic progressions, and other musical features using only your ears and brain. It's a lot easier to identify the space between two notes if you know what they both are. My aptitude for ear training also paid dividends for me as a jazz musician. It's made the process of transcribing solos and learning songs by ear much more streamlined. In jam session situations, I don't have to fish around to find what key the band is playing an unfamiliar tune or a stock chord progression in. Essentially, my ability to fake it is greatly improved with the help of AP. Unfortunately, this isn't really the point of ear training. Ideally, you're supposed to come to terms with the sounds of intervals independent of what the notes actually are. A major sixth up from any note will always sound like a major sixth, but having AP, I would listen for both notes and then essentially reverse engineer the interval. If I heard a C and then the A above it in unison, I would have to hear the C and then hear the A, and then do the math to arrive at the conclusion that yes, That's a major sixth. It was only later down the line that I really worked out hearing the sounds of intervals, chords, chord progressions, and melodies on their own terms, divorced from whatever their pitch content might be. This is the means by which musicians without AP develop a skill called relative pitch, which is a little bit like AP, but it requires the use of an external reference. If you've ever taken a music theory class, you've hopefully developed some decent relative pitch through melodic dictation. Usually your teacher or professor will establish a home base key, priming your ears for hearing the melody you're about to write down so you can use your melodic and harmonic knowledge to get all 10 points on every dictation on the final. Oh god, did he say this is the final playback? Having AP turns melodic dictation into essentially a grown-up coloring book. My professors would actually have me write dictations down in a different key from the one they were playing in. This actually brings me to the next drawback of AP. Transposing becomes so much harder. This had a massive impact on my grade school singing career in choirs. If the director wanted to take something up or down a half step or two, that meant that as I was reading my score as we performed, I would have to transpose every note and phrase on the fly in my head before I sang it. In real time. Most other musicians, if you tell them that an E is an F, they won't notice. But oh, I notice. This is where AP stops being a fun party trick and starts becoming actively intrusive. The worst part of AP is easily the fact that I can't shut it off. Did you know radio stations and DJs will sometimes slightly speed songs up a little bit? I did, because every time I heard them do it, I would notice because the song was a bit sharper than normal. I've gone to see bands live and heard them play songs a half step or two lower than the record. It's probably not apparent to most people in the audience, but for me, when I hear a song in a different key from the original recording, the experience of listening to it becomes profoundly different. Going back to the choir thing, what also bugged me was the way that we would sometimes end a piece in a different key than we began in. Let me explain. These days, we usually tune to the note A4, which is set at 440 Hertz. Due to a bunch of weird math, when choirs sing pure intervals, which are much more in tune than the notes on a piano, that A440 center can drift up or down by a comma, an interval much smaller than a half step, at a time. This comma pump can mean starting a piece in A and ending it in A flat without the sheet music ever reflecting that change. Thankfully, I'm a saxophonist, so I've had quite a bit of experience transposing, specifically by a whole step or major sixth up from concert pitch. I can do that essentially on the fly, since I've developed that skill through reading concert pitch lead sheets on saxophones in small groups. Ask me to transpose something by a third on the fly though, and I'm basically useless. I have to really sit and work it out note by note, and I still sometimes mess it up. This can make learning lines in all 12 keys, something we jazz musicians place a lot of importance on, very frustrating. If I first learn a line in E flat, it's not so bad hearing it in keys that are near it on the circle of fourths or fifths like A flat or B flat, but when I get over here to like G major, A major territory, oh no, I'm anamorphing into a snail. Snails can't play saxophone. Oh no. Every morning my cat wakes me up. E flat glissando to D flat. I turn the PS4 on. B. I watch a YouTube video. The background music is in D minor. I get a phone call and my phone plays Coffin Nails, the instrumental version of MF Doom's Rap Snitch Knishes featuring Mr. Fantastic. It's in B major, but the sample's a bit sharp, so I guess it's in B slightly sharp major. A truck drives past my window and its engine is humming a C. Every moment of every day, I am hyper aware of this. I still sometimes get jealous of people without AP for whom music is more of a mystery. I'm certainly still blown away by music on a regular basis, but there's also some ineffable quality of AP that can very easily take me out of the moment whenever I'm listening to something. I sometimes wish I could shut my brain off and just take pure sounds in, completely untethered from any notion of what the names of the notes I'm hearing are. But it's essentially impossible for me to do that unless I'm listening to extremely dissonant music. And dissonant music is cool as f***, but I can't live there all the time. This brings me to the second category of ways AP has affected my relationship with sound, although really I should say how it will affect my relationship with sound. This is because, as you know because you watched Adam Neely's video, this is your last chance. If I live long enough, my AP is going to go away. Over time, past a certain age, it begins to drift in one direction or another. The thought of this legitimately kind of terrifies me if I think about it for too long. It's the same sort of fear that many people have about not knowing what happens after we die. Pardon me if I sound dramatic, but I've seen and read extensively about what losing absolute pitch can do to people. A lot of the anecdotes follow a pattern. First, you notice that you keep hearing, say, F as F sharp instead, and eventually, every time you sit in front of a piano, everything sounds completely different from how it looks in your fingers. Vibraphonist Gary Burton retired from performing shortly after he noticed his AP was going away, and Mary L. Bianco has written an entire master's thesis about the mental strife that is so often associated with the loss of AP as musicians reach their 50s and 60s, the point at which AP loss usually begins. It doesn't look too good for me. This is why I've found it increasingly important in recent years that I seriously develop my relative pitch skills. My hope is that I'll be able to hold on to at least some pieces of musical information to orient myself in various musical settings when the time comes for me and my AP to part ways, but the idea that the sounds of everyday life are going to potentially be very, very different to me in 30 or 40 years still deeply unsettles me. I'm most worried about how it will change my relationship with my saxophones. The double whammy of hearing all the notes in a different place and having to transpose them, I'm not sure how long I'll be able to keep that up. I guess if I have any point here in talking about my experiences with AP, it's that AP is absolutely not everything it's cracked up to be. Yes, there are a lot of nice things that come with it, but just as often it can be frustrating and actually more inhibiting than if I were to simply have relative pitch. Relative pitch is honestly so much more useful. If you have AP and you've been reverse engineering intervals in ear training class like I used to do, I'd advise you to take the time to really get acquainted with the sounds of music on their own terms. Know what a minor third sounds like, not just that it's made up of a D and an F. Your ears will hopefully thank you for it down the line. For the non-AP havers, I hope that this deep dive into my sense of hearing helps you understand why those of us that do have AP are like this. And rest assured, we might have a strong sense of pitch, but eventually it'll be much less useful than your sense of pitch ever will be. We'll be the ones relying on you to figure out what key we're in. Before I go, I wanted to let you know that I have an EP releasing on Bandcamp and streaming services on Friday, November 25th. It's the debut of my singer-songwriter project, Taylor Moniker. It's called TMR0, and I'm excited to get it out there. Some of these songs date back 2 or 3 years, and it felt good to finally get them finished. There are a couple songs from the EP already available to listen to on Bandcamp, but the rest will drop, like I said, on the 25th. There's also a lyric video for the song Someone that you can check out. I need to figure out how to end these videos. Bye.